Alex vagyok, főnök vagyok, nem kiabálok. I am actually learning Hungarian, and it's a really hard language. Like, wow. It's like, the best analogy I have for it at the moment is how, you know how we all understood databases as relational databases, and you have tables and things, and that's how they work. And then somebody came along and was like, what if we had all of the same things, but we just completely ballsed up the paradigm? Let's have no SQL. That's what Hungarian feels like. You've got all of the same things, but none of the same rules. That's, you can ask me questions about language as well. So, yeah, do you want to, I can say things, do you want to say things?
You say things. I'm going to help you to facilitate, run up and down.
Okay.
Basically, the idea, we prepared for 4 topics, just in case, if you don't have any questions. Maybe we can start with the first one as a warm-up,
yeah.
Right? It's on the screen. So
I'll give you the very quick overview. I was asked to speak here, and I said I would very much love to, but in all honesty, I do not have the time to prepare something. Because I'm trying to look after myself as a human. And I said, but we can do an Ask Me Anything, which either I have the answer in my mind and a story, or I don't, and I'll tell you. And so we have a couple of topics. The first one is roles of testers in teams. But really, any question you have about, I think my best topics are exploratory testing, automation, the roles of testers in teams, unit testing for testers. But I also know a lot about management and agile and leadership. So this is your chance to either hear an expert say, I don't know either, or to give you a potential story that sometimes that's really helpful. So yeah, hit me. There's a man at the back. Don't actually hit me. Why would I say that?
No, I won't, Alex. Nice to meet again. Tester role in Scaled Agile framework, which doesn't talk about tester at all, and there is no quality assurance, no testing. There is built-in quality.
Okay, I will give you, first of all, the honest answer that I have never worked in a Scale Agile context, nor do I want to. However, my gut feeling would be that in the same way as in Agile teams, so my firm belief is that we do need specialists in teams. And no, these specialists should not be hoarding all of the information and all of the tasks. They should be a knowledge beacon, doing things and helping things. And I have, hey, come to my keynote. It's going to be awesome. I'll be talking about this. So we do need testers. I would imagine we would probably need testers in Scaled Agile as well. But like I say, that's a hellscape that I've so far stayed away from. That's the short answer. Does that help a bit? Should I expound?
Yeah, let's see if I answer more in my talk tomorrow, but I'm happy you didn't steal my show. Well, I think that's then a difficult part. I will think on another question, okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? And the third?
Hi. So what do you think of manual testing in the long run? Because some people consider it, I don't know, bullshit, let's say. Some say they won't go away in the next, I don't know, 30 years. What do you think?
Yeah. I have multiple, so I'm the kind of person that believes that multiple things can be true at the same time. And I have multiple opinions on this. Opinion one is the way that I see the industry. There is still, so first of all, for manual test cases, let's start with that. They're not my favorite thing to do, but as I said in my workshop this morning, I think I am glad that the airplane that I flew on yesterday probably has some good manual test cases as well. Probably, right? I think that there is still a great deal that we can't or won't automate that needs to be done. I also think that only doing test cases is whether they're automated or manual, is a terrible way of doing quality assurance, because exploratory testing is incredibly important. That's still manual as well, but depending on what perspective you're coming from, that might be a different perspective. I also believe that automation is incredibly useful and so relevant for teams. And I talk to testers in their, I mean, I have a testing team. I talk to other testers a lot. I think there are, in German we say zwei, oh God, I don't even know which language this is in anymore. I have two opinions, two hearts beat in my chest. I think that might be English. The first one is, I would love to have an industry where being, for example, a fantastic test analyst or a fantastic exploratory tester, where that would be definitely enough to always keep you in the best jobs. That's what my tester heart says. I'm also a manager. I also see what customers want, what projects need, what the market is offering to me, and I have a feeling that for no role, not just for testers, but for no role will it be able to be the case that you can just be good at one thing. I think that we're all going to need to have more things in our belt. So maybe I'm really good at exploratory testing and I'm fantastic at conflict resolution. Or I'm good at exploratory testing and I do some automation. Or I'm good at exploratory testing or manual testing and I know some UX. I think, this is part of my talk on Thursday as well, I think that we won't be able to allow ourselves to just have one specialty. And a part of myself thinks that that's a terrible shame because that means context switching. It means diluting what I can do and it means not focusing on only one thing. And on the other side, I just see that being the reality with the complexity of the systems that we're doing now, that we'll have to have more to do. So that's not an answer, those are some opinions. Does that help? Yeah. Okay. Oh, okay.
Let's see another question. By the way, we are talking about automation.
We can talk about automation.
No. Because it's a good question, because we were talking about manual testing and automation. And some people think that it's equivalent. So, for example, running an automated Selenium test is the same as someone is clicking through the workflow.
No.
Yeah, I know. Let's talk about this, because I think some people misunderstand that what Selenium does is not necessarily the same what a human being would do.
So I think robots are great. They're really good at things that robots can do. What they're not very good at is being human. And I had this most recently. I was ensembling with Elizabeth Zagroba and Marit Piarvi. We have a little group. We get together every so often. And what we really wanted to do, it wasn't with Selenium, it was with, we're looking at Playwright at the moment. What we really wanted to do was to test whether something was actually visible. And I know that there are tools available for that. We can do oh goodness me, what's it called? Apply tools, things like that. Thank you. We can do those kind of tests. But we wanted to use Playwright to do it. And it turns out that visibility, which is such an easy thing for us as humans, assuming that you have sight, can I see it? Yes, no. That's so difficult on a technical level. It could be there, but hidden behind some kind of CSS thing that's 100% opaque. It could be there, but not on the screen. It could be not on the screen, but somehow rendered with something else. It could be in the DOM or not in the DOM. And I worked for a long time on an automation tool as a product. These things that we take incredibly for granted as humans are really, really difficult. So there's definitely a place for the robots, and it's not the same as being a human.
Any thoughts from the audience? Otherwise, I have one, so be quick.
I think we have Gaspar, sorry.
There is a company somewhere, I don't know where, who somehow got my phone number, and they think that I'm Gabor Szabó, and they keep calling me and asking me, and I cannot explain them that it's not me. Please delete
But you're
my
Hungarian,
number.
You must be called Gabor.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, so my question is back related to the role, and you said, and this is also what I believe, that the tester's role is somehow to bring in the testing mindset, the testing knowledge, and all these things. And I started my career as a developer, and for me this was really a big change once I realized that there is a whole big thing that I wasn't recognizing before, and then now I'm getting into that. But when I need to stop and say that, okay, but what is that knowledge? List those things that you have to tell to the team. then I'm always a little bit, I cannot really answer that question, because if I what is that thing that the testers need to bring in? At the end, I always come to the thing that I need to bring in that knowledge that, hey, it's better to have some tests because it will be better, or you are about to jump into a feature. Well, that's better to cover the existing stuff with test if you haven't done before. Those kind of things. But this sounds very simple. Like just you don't forget testing. That's maybe the message that I would need to keep constantly bringing, even to myself. But is there anything else, or is there anything more than what you think that they need to bring in as a kind of thing that?
Yeah, I mean that's a good question, because testing has this. Oh, sorry. Let me be more specific. Anything to do with quality has the tendency to be very invisible. One of my friends that I worked with, he said, "Hey, if you look at a chair, you can see that there was ergonomics have gone into it, right? The feet are at the bottom and not at the top. You can see that design went into it. But what you don't see is how much I mean, have you seen videos of how much testing goes into chairs? Like they have giant things that sit on them and they get, but you don't see it. Anything to do with quality tends to be invisible, and that's one of the, sometimes I wish I was in UX, because everyone's like, ooh, shiny prototypes, I love it. And that's cool. I'm not jealous, it's fine. I think the overarching thing that I would say that the testing mindset brings and to have in your mind is risk. What happens if, or rather when, this goes wrong? What aren't we thinking of? And I really like Janet Crispin. Wow, Alex, it's been a long day. Janet, please don't tweet that. Janet Gregory and Lisa Crispin have a very, very good way of saying this. They say that when we're working in teams, the focus on detail and getting things done and how exactly does this have to be right now, that tends to fall very, very much to the developers. And this is an experience I've had when I've been unit testing with developers. The amount of decisions that go into coding that we never talk about is phenomenal. We think we've sorted everything out, but a developer sitting in front of their TDD suite and deciding what the next thing is, they are making massive decisions all of the time. And the perspective they say is that the test perspective always brings us back to the big picture. What does that mean? What does that mean in terms of risk? What does that mean in terms of value, right? I mean, we're perfectly capable of writing good systems that nobody uses. So I think risk and value, those are the two things that I have at the top of my mind when I say what are testers bringing to teams, regardless of which methods they're using, regardless of how they're integrating into the team. And the other thing, and I say this at developer conferences, anytime I'm trying to convince them that they might want testers in their teams, I'm like, okay. You say that, the testing, you'll just do that as well. I said, okay. But which one of you is willing to go to a testing conference? Which one of you is willing to spend their yearly budget on learning more about testing? And suddenly it's really quiet. So for me, the person who has that specialty in the team is the person who has the focus. That's my main role. That's the thing I'm thinking about most of the time. They have the specialty, they go and learn about it, and they have the passion. That's what they want to do. They don't want to be writing code, and that's fine, or maybe they are writing code, but it's for a different reason. They want to be looking out for the quality. So those three things, passion, specialization, and focus, and then risk and value. That's kind of how I'd put it together. Yeah. There's a lot of stuff in this brain.
Yeah. And I have a question. So we were talking about automation, if manual testing is done. Probably folks recognize that we write scripts, and scripts are looking for something we expect, so the known. Maybe you can reflect on this, because...
Can I tell my Pelican story?
Yes.
Everybody who was in my tutorial this morning heard it already. So, the entry to this is that we can only write test cases or test scripts in any way for risks that we have identified. And here we go. I enjoy going running. I was at a customer's. I'm going for a run before I go and give them my workshop. It was dark. It was, I don't know, September, so the mornings were dark as well, and it was in a different city. So what are my risks if I go for a run? Why? So seriously, men always think I'm more likely to get lost than get attacked, and that tells us a great deal about the system, but thank you. So get lost, get attacked. Anything else? Everyone's afraid to answer now. Get injured, right? I mean, which unfortunately happens to me quite frequently as well. So I mitigated these risks. I took my phone with me, which is good against the getting lost and hopefully against the getting attacked and getting injured. And I'm running through the park, and I saw a dinosaur. So, for context, I grew up in Liverpool, which is, I don't know, how many people live in Budapest?
1 million plus the...
It's smaller than
2 million.
Budapest. It's about half the size of Budapest, but it's a big city. So the birds that I know are sparrows and pigeons. Small birds, slightly bigger birds. I really love dinosaurs, and I'm terrified of them as well. There was a pelican in this park. A pelican looks exactly like a pterodactyl. I know, I've seen Jurassic Park. So since I had my phone with me, and I am to some degree part of the Instagram generation, I didn't quite take a selfie with it. I take selfies with goats, but the pelican, that was a different level of risk, which turns out it was a good idea, because I go closer to the pelican to take a picture of it, and it's, Jesus Christ, they have big wingspans. It spread its wings and started running towards me, and I ran away. On my list of risks, this is how we get here, for that morning, I did not have being attacked by a dinosaur. Which just shows us that only by exploring, only by going and do the things, can we learn about the risks that are actually there. And we had this in the workshop today. We had groups that said, okay, I'm going to go and look at this. I'm like, okay, and how did you find that? Yeah, after 3 minutes, we found something that we didn't even have on our list. That's why exploratory testing is important. Pelicans, remember the pelicans.
Thanks for the story. So, anyone? Any questions? Oh, we have to.
Oh, loads. You're going to have to run around.
I start here because I'm lazy.
You're the boss. You can.
So this is a question more general than just for testers. It's more about communication and problem solving. So organization under stress to deliver and to push out good software oftentimes find themselves to generate and then stick to metrics that are easily understandable, such as how many bugs we found. And complex conversations can oftentimes be distilled and collapse into one tiny thing and pointing at the wrong thing and looking at the wrong focus. Have you had an experience, I'm assuming you have had experiences similar to this, and how do you overcome these sort of difficulties and learn to talk about the right thing and with the right level of complexity?
Yep. I will give you, definite communication is the hardest thing. I believe it's Jerry Weinberg that says it's always a people problem. Yes. Can I tell you a story about this as well? I have stories. So I was told to rescue a failing project, so the funny thing is, at some point, if you get high enough in the hierarchy, you're responsible to do everything, even if you have zero experience with it. I had zero experience with rescuing projects because mine always were fine. But it was suddenly my job. And I was told also that the person on the other side of the customer, so we'd gotten into escalation ping pong, which if you've never played it, is not a fun game. Their project lead had not come and talked to our project lead. They'd got sick of them. They'd gone and escalated to their project lead. He would have had the chance to de-escalate back and say, deal with it. He didn't. He called me. I, at that point, cannot say, I'm not dealing with this, my project lead is dealing. That's not how the game works. So I had to deal with it. So I was suddenly in this. And I'd been told that the guy on the other side, he's numbers driven. He loves KPIs, and I'm like, oh shit, I'm bad at numbers. But I said, okay, at that point you just have to nod and say, yes, I'm going to do it. And I told him, I said, I'm going to figure out KPIs for you, but let me get to grips with what's happening in the project first. And so I was, a couple of weeks later, I'm giving him an overview of what I found out and what I think to understand so far. And he just said to me, well, Alex, I'm just sick of being called into escalation meetings. That's your KPI. I said, okay, that's what I'm going to measure. We're going to measure how often you get called into escalation meetings. Because the great thing is I can't gamify this. There's no way in hell I'm going to convince that project lead not to CC you into an email if he's angry. I have no influence there. The only thing I can do is to either make sure that the quality is good enough, that there's no escalations happening, or that the trust is back so that even if we do have problems, you don't have to escalate. That was the thing that I found. And that was easy to measure, and it was the right kind of thing to measure. Just for the record, no further escalation meetings. And no, I do not want to save your projects because it was terribly stressful. And so I like that. I was talking about this in the taxi as well before. I am quite a fan of the DORA metrics, which I'm not going to be able to get off the top of my head right now. It is how many times you deploy, how long it takes you to get something from commit to deploy, how often your deployment, I think they call it failure. Help me here, Fiona. Is it? Change failure. Change failure, right, thank you. So that's not how many bugs you find in production, because a bug might not be a failure, right? That's how often do we have to roll it back or push something new? And the fourth one, you're the expert.
Time to resolve something?
Yeah, time to resolve. So how long it takes when you get that. And the thing, I've never personally used them, but I'm currently trying to convince our DevOpsy teams to try them out. The thing I like about them so much is that you can try to game them by saying, oh, we're just going to release every day, but that's going to ruin the other metrics in the same thing. It's a nice combination of what is actual value for the customer and what's actual risk for the customer. It's not counting bugs, it's counting, is the productive system usable or not usable, and how long is it taking us to get new things out there. So if I'm forced to, those are the kind of metrics I try to find.
Hi, this is Vipin. So coming all the way from India, and hi. And primarily we are working for like as an offshore team, like most of the companies in India, and we have some different challenges that the product companies don't face. So when we all grew as testers, we all developed as testers, right? So we have leisure time to become good manual testers. Then automation jumped in, and then everyone again took years to become automation experts. And then mobile things came in, and then you have a different flavor of testing. Of course, you have to write test cases and all other stuff. But now, with the fast changing world, with all these AIs and MLs and these things keep coming, I think every 2 years down the line, people will say, oh, what I am doing till now is no more required. So the testers always have this question to me, and I also see a lot of blogs and other stuff, like how do the testers keep pace with the changing world, the changing technical world? Developers, because they have to do the coding, they will automatically change, new tools come in. But for testers who may not be as good programmers as developers, they always find it a challenge. They always find like there is a plethora of tools available for every new technology that is coming in. Yeah. But the typical management mindset is they don't want to give you time to analyze those tools because that is also like a development task, right? Only thing is that is not producing a product. So all these challenges that testers face with this modern, changing, fast-paced technology world, what are your views on that?
Yeah. I mean, first of all, definitely come to my keynote on Thursday. But, so I think I might look young, but I've been in technology for 17 years. And if I don't look young, it's because I've been in technology for 17 years. And I am seeing some things come around for the third time. So low code is one of them. Outsourcing everything is one of them. I believe that there are fine minds all over the globe, and I firmly believe that the way that companies try and outsource a lot of the time is terribly destructive for products and for the world. But that's a whole nother topic. I've also seen it come around a few times that some cool new hype comes out, and this was with web. It's now with AI. It was with IoT as well. And so me as a tester, I'm like, okay, this is cool. We have new stuff. How am I going to test it? And the answer from the developers is always, go away. We're still trying to figure out how to use it. And weirdly enough, that's fine. nobody, like I read something a few years ago that said that the entire web is held together by peanut butter and glue, and we're running out of glue. I think it's from Programming Sucks. For some reason, we are completely okay as an industry that our products are being based on technologies that are flaky at best and haven't really been looked at. And then when we come along as testers, people are like, no, don't try and test this yet. We still don't know how it works. And I'm like, isn't that one of the problems? It happened with IoT. Our company started like, oh, we want to look at IoT. And I'm like, okay, how are we going to test it? I don't know. We don't know how it works. This is going to be a problem. So I definitely see that. I think that the only thing that we can do is to be those people saying, how are we going to test this? What risks do we have? And always having that growth mindset. And it's a little, I mean, everybody in IT has to have it. You can't be, you can hardly say, I know Java Swing, and I have known it for 17 years, and that will serve me till the end of my career. I have a few people for whom that will still be true. They're going to retire in 5 years, and if they do not want to learn about Angular, that's okay. But for the rest of us, we're good. And when we've figured out AI, the next thing will come along if we haven't all already died from our own quality problems. So I think that continuing to ask the questions of how are we going to do this, and there's a lot of this about getting allies on your side within the team, and taking and making sure, advocating that you get the time. And I think, I am a manager as well, so I can speak for at least some managers. We do care about quality. It's just that sometimes you have to talk to us in terms of risk. And you have to understand that sometimes, like on the level of a manager, stuff that used to keep me awake at night in a project isn't even on my radar anymore. And that doesn't mean that it's not important for the people in the project. It just means that I might be worrying whether the inflation crisis means that the whole company dies. I care less about that one bug. Of course I care about it if you manage to tell me that this one bug is important enough that it's on that same level. So talking to managers in terms of risk, if we don't do this, if we don't catch up, that's probably how you'll get them. That's a bit mixed, but those are my thoughts. I have no idea about the time. You will have to stop me at some point.
Yeah, I know. We have like 15 more minutes.
Okay.
10.
10, okay.
10. Time is flying. Another question I do have, but I'm not going to ask. We can move on to the next topic.
Yeah, we can have random slides. I mean, that's cool.
Come on.
Oh, we've got unit testing for test. Oh, we have a question. We have questions here. Questions from humans. That's fine, as if I'm looking at them anyway. I mean, I'm grateful for the slides, thank you.
Thanks for doing this, by the way.
This is fun, I like this. I'm not doing talks ever again.
Nice. I was wondering, you're an advocate of exploratory testing, and I wondered how you apply that to the paradigms of shift left, shift right.
Oh, that's such a good question. Thank you so very much. I think why I like this so much is that I just get to say all of my opinions. This is so much fun. Thank you for listening. I firmly believe that humans are exploratory creatures. I think everything that we do is exploratory. I think that we just lose track of that. This has a lot of, I will get to the point. This has a lot of parallels to me with Agile and everything that we've gone through in the last couple of years. I remember when I was having a terrible time with how unpredictable the world was, that my coach said to me, she said, Alex, just because everything stayed the same for a long time didn't mean you were controlling it. Oh, I think I'm still digesting that one. So I think that we as humans, we're used to the idea that we do a thing and we learn from it, but we lose that somewhere. So I think, to answer your question, shift left, of course we're exploring when we're talking about requirements. What happens if we do this? You write something on the board, well, are we doing that? No, that's out of scope. What would happen if this happened? Oh, that's a really good question. We're going to have to talk about that later. What about this risk here? We're already gaining ideas for what we might test, but at the same time, we're testing the idea. Shift right, and I've not done this myself personally, but I've read about it, and I've done some kind of exploration, if you will, on it. I think that observability, I think that that's a place where we as testers are going to be really, really useful if we decide to learn some of the skills. monitoring in production, seeing what's going on, because that's where our unknown unknowns are happening now, right? I mean, the whole world is our production environment. I spoke to some games testers from Sony a few years ago, and they said, well, when we get bug reports, we have to ask things like, did the dog run across the field? Was the microwave on? And was a bus going past? And I'm like, wow, and I think that my biggest problems are, were you using Java 7 or Java 8? But the kind of things that we have for how complicated and connected our systems are now, there's no way in hell that we can know or even find out all of the unknown unknowns before production, which means that looking at things happening in production, using tools to do, and like I say, I've not done any of this yet, I'm just super excited about it, and then helping developers to design the kind of logging that we'll need to find things out. I think that's a totally exciting area for us as testers. And I think that we should definitely get into that. So I think that it's everywhere. I think that it's right the way through. Did I turn myself up by accident?
No. You
Okay.
can still hear
I'm just very loud. Okay. Does
So-
that help? Okay.
Any other question? Reflection to this question should test. Sorry.
I mean, I have opinions about everything.
Hopefully this one will be a little bit tougher one.
Okay.
When working with companies that are utilizing the software for their own business, I tend to face the situation that they always want to have these kind of reports that how much you have tested and how much you have left. And I try to kind of, but we need to do some exploratory, and they are already out the door. So how to convince them? Some kind of ideas how to find the ways to convince those people to let us do some more exploratory testing and not to bore the key users with scripted manual testing.
I think that the way that comes to mind, so I've not had to do this myself, so this is me spitballing. I think the way that comes to mind the most would be to ask them if they're willing to do a small experiment. If they're willing to spend a little bit of time working with you or one of your best testers to look at the latest feature or whatever, and to be watched, to give input. And then afterwards to be like, okay, was that helpful? Oh, yeah, we didn't have any of that in the test cases. So that's one aspect, that's being very open and transparent about it. The other thing is that I am definitely not averse to saying, yes, we're going to need 40 hours to test, and knowing that 5 of them will be for exploratory. I will lie if I have to get results. Please don't tweet about that either. I mean, I prefer the transparent way. I prefer people seeing the value, because we're always encouraged to ask why. Why do they need this report? And I did a workshop with some teams at a university it was on agile practices, and we had where are your meetings? When are you talking to each other? And I swear, this sounds like it's from a textbook, but it happens to me. Team 1 said, yeah, we have this meeting, it's really boring, but Team 2 wants us to do it. Team 2, we thought that you wanted that meeting. Right, so understanding what people need and why is incredibly important. And at the same time, I have been the person in a telco saying, maybe we have a problem here, and then getting bashed on the head later for saying that I'm not allowed to talk about a problem. Right, so transparency would be nice, but isn't always the option. I think that I would ask them to experiment. And if they're not willing to do that, I would mention in my role as a consultant that the unwillingness to do any experimentation is a huge business risk, and see if they go with that.
Okay, another question. We have 3 more minutes to see what Alex has to say, at least today, because tomorrow we are going to have chance. Okay, we can move into the next topic. Okay, let's see. Good practices for automation.
You can ignore the topic as well. I mean,
I had no question before this topic for the topic before, because the question was a little bit confusing, because we have 50 people or more than 50 people in the room, and maybe all other read this the sentence another way. Could you go back to the question? Because what does it mean? Should the testers do not to test units should the tester not use manual unit testing, or should the testers use unit testing frameworks for higher level testing, or should testers do not unit testing? This question.
It's a good question.
That's one thing, because it's communication. We use terms, and very often we think in another way. We use terms, and very often testing means for the department or the stakeholders, the top level, and the developers, the unit testing, and so we speaking past each other. So very often.
Let me tell you. Let me again go off on a small tangent and then try and answer your question. First of all, I did linguistics, so my favorite thing to tell people when they're like, "But words mean things," is no, they don't. Words don't mean things. Words mean things in context, if we agree on that context, and words' meanings change based on various things. Of course, words mean things, because we can talk about them, but the idea that anyone will definitely agree on what I'm talking about is very small. And as a perfect example of that, when I was trying to introduce more unit testing within the company, meaning the automated testing of single behaviors on a component code level, my own dear husband said, "We do loads of unit tests. We run all of our end-to-end tests with JUnit." No, it's like, thanks, Dennis. So what I meant with this question, and this is a thing that I've done over the past few years, I have actually started getting more involved as a person and encouraging testers in teams to actually work with developers when they are doing test-driven development, or writing tests of, I think, is it Jeepo Hill that calls them that? Micro tests. So the smallest amount of behavior, completely independent of anything else, which has been an area that has only, when I grew into testing, it was developers do unit testing and that's all fine. And then I got a bit further and it turns out, no, they don't, and no, it's not. So now we're having a lot more of a conversation about, well, can I help you with this? I have one guy on a team who, anytime the developers do unit tests, which is fantastic, and then he does a pull request and extends them and then tells them, there's communication, for all of the equivalence classes that they forgot. And that's how they work in that team. So he did biology. He doesn't come from he comes from a very technical background. He doesn't come from an IT background. And I think this is one of the final barriers of holistic quality is that something that only developers are allowed to play with? And I think the answer is no. And that's where this question came from.
So this was the final question, because the time is up.
That's okay.
You have plenty of opportunities to talk to Alex tomorrow. And even, I think, after this meetup, we have like 10 more minutes
I'll be...
as we are wrapping up. We have one more task for you, to draw
I can be the fairy.
the prize, because we are going to hand out a free ticket for tomorrow. So
I want to say thank you to everyone for playing along with this format. It was fun for me. I hope it was useful for you.